Welcome to the Metal Bob Live Podcast. I'm your host, Metal Bob. Today's show is brought to you by Legend Picks, artist Jeremiah Kalleck, and also the Texas Vinyl Coalition. You can find links to our sponsors and more on the Metal Bob Live website. There you can also find links to the latest Metal Bob gear, including shirts, hoodies, and more. On today's show, I had the honor of speaking with Grammy-nominated guitarist Jim West. We discuss his latest album, More Guitar Stories, his passion for the slack key guitar style, and we also discuss Weird Al. So sit back, have a listen, and enjoy the show. Thank you. Hello, Jim.
Hey, Robert.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what, man, I appreciate your time tonight.
No worries.
So how's everything going on your end? Pretty good?
Yeah, because of this whole lockdown thing, obviously I've been home a lot and haven't been playing any shows, but it keeps me in the studio. So I've got a lot of recording going on. I've got a new record coming out on Friday and another one ready to go probably in November.
Yeah.
So I'm staying busy.
So tell us a little bit about the More Guitar Stories that drops on Friday.
Well, it's a follow-up. I had a CD out in 2015 called Guitar Stories, and Guitar Stories was a departure from my previous records, which had been very much in the Hawaiian slack key, sort of modern Hawaiian slack key vein. Guitar Stories was more about using the slack key tunings, but playing a lot of different styles. Like on the first Guitar Stories record, I had some Americana. I had some sort of classical sounding orchestral stuff. I had some Middle Eastern song. I had, various world influences. So More Guitar Stories is pretty much the same idea. It's using the Hawaiian slack key tunings, but exploring a lot of different styles. So on this record, I have West African styles. I have some Indian music, Celtic, some Americana, various things. So that's sort of the idea. The idea is that the guitar is sort of telling some stories.
Absolutely. So this will be your 8th studio album? Am I right on that?
Let's see. Coconut Hat, Slack Key West, Kimo Style. Then I had a couple of Christmas records. Then I had a record with Ken Emerson, Slackers in Paradise, 6, and I had Moku Maluhia, 7, 8. So this would be my ninth CD.
All right. Well, I just listened to Peaceful Island yesterday, and I'll tell you what, buddy, I really enjoyed that. That was a great record.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got a Grammy nomination, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. You did get a Grammy nomination for that. How'd that make you feel?
It was pretty surprising. I've been a member of NARAS, the Grammy, Society, for a long time, but I only really started entering my CDs about, 3 CDs back. I don't know why. I probably should have from the beginning, but you have no expectations at all. You just put it out there. And I remember I was one morning, couldn't even remember when they were going to announce the nominations, but I was sort of just hanging out reading the newspaper, and I noticed my phone was buzzing a lot. The ringer was off, but it was sitting over in the corner charging up, and it just kept buzzing and buzzing. And after a while, I thought, somebody's trying to get a hold of me, And when I opened it up, my mail was just like all these messages, congratulations. And it was like, what?
That's great. So, I was going to ask you, so what got you into the Hawaiian style music and the slack key guitar stuff?
Well, I went to Hawaii just by chance in the mid '80s. A friend of mine, I was on tour with Weird Al, and he was a guy who was helping us out on the crew and also playing a bit in the show. And he had a friend over on Maui, and he said, "Hey, after the tour, I'm going to go to Maui and see my friend. You want to come along and we'll hang out in Maui for a couple weeks?" And I said, "Yeah, sounds good to me." I'd never been to Hawaii before. And so we flew into this little, we flew to Maui, and then we took a small plane into this little town called Hana. It's a very kind of remote town on the east side of Maui. And I really just fell in love with the place. I mean, it's just gorgeous place, and that's where we were staying. They had a lot of records, Hawaiian slack key records, vinyl, in those days. And that music, I just loved listening to it. I just felt like it sounded like the way the place looked and felt. It just really reflected the place. And I just like to listen to it for many years. And then years later, I just started writing some slack key tunes of my own. It just sort of crept in over a period of 6 or 7 years.
Absolutely. So do you still have a Dean signature model guitar? Are you still playing a lot of Dean guitars?
I have a couple of Dean guitars. The instrument that I use actually is on my Dean bass. I have a bass, and it's not like they make it anymore, but it's really a lovely bass. It's got a neck through the body, thing, beautiful neck. And so on some of my records, sometimes I'll hire real bass players, and sometimes I play bass myself on them, but that's the bass I use. And it's been, that's been a great instrument. It's on a lot of my records.
You're also a keyboard player, correct?
I play a little keyboard, I used to work as a composer for film and TV a lot. So, you were doing a lot of keyboard parts and playing, orchestral parts on the keyboard. And, I'm just self-taught, but I can get around a little bit on it. I wouldn't hire myself to play keyboards in a band, even though I've done a little bit of that, but it's just something I use as a writing tool and, just use when necessary.
You mentioned the composer and the TV stuff. I was going to ask you about that. So what have you been involved with lately in that kind of field?
Well, I kind of got out of doing it. Even though I enjoy it so much, I've got so much going on with my own music, and then, playing with Weird Al, sometimes, of course, we're not touring right now, but occasionally I'll do a documentary or something for a director friend or something like that. But I'm not really out there looking, beating the bushes trying to get the work. But years ago, I started doing it in the late 90s. I started writing for TV and film, and I did a few, small features, a lot of animation. I did the Saturday morning Iron Man animation and a whole bunch of cartoon shows, some TV commercials for, Honda and, Disney Channel, tons of stuff, actually Country Music Awards. I did some things, and Nickelodeon Kids Choice Awards, and I don't know, just tons of stuff.
Right on. Well, if you don't mind, I would like to get into a little bit of the Weird Al stuff. I know you've been playing with Weird Al for 37 years, and that's a long time.
It's a long time for sure.
Yeah. So how did all that become? How did all that come about?
Well, I grew up in Florida, and that's where I started playing music. And at a certain point, I knew I had to kind of move to a bigger city to, further my career. And New York was, it's too cold. It snows up there. And, LA's warmer and sunnier. So I moved to LA. And Steve J, who plays bass with Weird Al, we were old friends from Florida. And he had come out about a year before I had. And he met Al. I think he got called to do Al's very first record as a session player. And he called me one day and said that, Al was going to put a band together because he had some gigs and he wanted to audition guitar players. So I just went and auditioned. I'd learned a couple of his tunes and they were cool. I was like, I learned the tunes and I thought, wow, these are very well crafted songs. And anyway, so I auditioned, and then Al called me one day, hey, you got the gig, and I was like, okay, great. I was actually playing in like 3 or 4 other bands at the time, but he had some gigs and he was a nice guy, and we played the gigs and did a little, very, very small tour, maybe a dozen shows or something like that. And then, and then the record that had Eat It on it, which was called the In 3D record, that once we did that record, then, it kind of blew up on MTV and became all of a sudden Al was a household name.
Absolutely. And here you are 37 years later, man, still doing it.
Yeah, none of us would ever thought, including Al, ever thought it would, probably go more than 2 or 3 years. But the beauty of it is, not only is he, just an amazingly creative and talented guy, he knows how to do it right. But with the world of parodies, of course, you always have new material. There's always some new pop music, and every time you put out a record with parodies of whatever was happening currently, we do shows, and all of a sudden there'd be a new crop of kids. I mean, some kids at the shows with their parents. They were 8 years old, and so every time there's a new record, there's another crop of fans in that sort of age group, and they grow up to become hardcore fans. So Al's audience was always sort of regenerating, whereas a lot of groups, they have their main audience, and as the group gets older, their audience gets older, and they stop going to shows, and it all kind of fizzles out, unless you're the Rolling Stones or something. But with Al, he keeps getting new fans every time he puts out a record.
Well, who are some of your influences growing up? Some of your musical influences?
Well, my older brother played. He's 10 years older than me. He played. Not professionally, but he had a guitar and he would play like folk songs, like finger picking and that kind of stuff. And, one day I just found his guitar in the closet and I started noodling with it, and he saw that I was interested. So he got me some new strings and a book and a capo and, hooked me up and got me going. And, some of my first influences, I guess, were some of that folk music that he would listen to, various kinds of folk artists. And that's where I first started learning how to finger pick. And then a couple years later, I think I started playing when I was 12. And a few years later, I got, more interested in electric guitar. And I was listening to, the English bands and, of course, Jimi Hendrix and Cream and a lot of the English acts and, of course, Led Zeppelin. And so I got an electric guitar. I kept playing acoustic. I never stopped playing acoustic, but I got a Les Paul and a Marshall amp. I think I had that when I was 16 or 17. And I started playing gigs. I started playing professionally, I think when I was 16. But I was really influenced by a lot of electric guitar music and also acoustic as well, the folky stuff and, Simon and Garfunkel, anything with acoustic guitar, I still love that. But, it was, when I played live, it was always rock and roll. It was, electric and, rock shows. I didn't start playing acoustic live until I got into slack key, and that was I'd always pretty much played electric.
Right. So the slack key guitar, that seems to be kind of your passion. You mostly on your solo releases, is that the kind of stuff you put out most of the time?
Yeah. It's essentially, it's acoustic guitar, but it's in different open tunings, and I use a lot of different open tunings. I've probably used a couple of dozen throughout my career, but what I find about with the open tunings is, obviously you're not using your regular knowledge. Your chords, your chords in standard tuning don't work anymore. So it kind of inspires you because you make these, kind of wonderful mistakes, or you're just noodling around. You really don't know what your hands aren't, playing the normal chords, and so you're kind of inspired to come up with new stuff. So every time I try a new tuning, I usually write 5 or 6 songs, and you oftentimes on a CD you'll see, because I always list the tunings on my CDs, you'll often see one tuning that's more represented than any others. And it's like, oh, he uses this tuning a lot on the record. That's because, that tuning inspired a lot of songs.
Right. So your record drops Friday. So is it available on CD? Is it going to be available on vinyl at all?
No, it's not on vinyl. The record I did with Ken Emerson, which was called Slackers in Paradise, we put that out on vinyl. And was a good record for vinyl because it was a very rootsy record, a lot of real old-timey stuff, and some modern stuff. But vinyl, as much as I love it, it's an expensive proposition to do these days. It's expensive. So I'm really just doing CD and digital and streaming and downloads. But CDs, people still buy CDs at shows, even though a lot of people don't have CD players anymore.
They don't even put them in cars anymore.
No. But, it's hard to autograph a download, it doesn't work very well. So I at shows, I sell CDs, but I also sell, which has been really, I was on a tour at the beginning of this year before the pandemic hit, called the International Guitar Night Tour. And I was also, besides I brought a couple of different titles with me CDs, but I also brought my USB drives. And they're little wooden USB drives, and they have all my records on them, And I think I sold them for $40. So, people would often buy that instead. They were going, oh, wait a minute, I can buy one CD for 15 or 20, but I can get all your CDs for 40. And people were like, I think I'll take that, because nowadays most modern cars have a USB jack, where you plug your phone in or whatever, and the music comes, through the system.
Right.
So with that little USB jack, they basically have, the little USB drive. They can basically have my entire catalog in the car, and of course at home on the computer as well and all that. But so that's actually been a very popular product for me, is the USB drives. I sell them on my website, and people seem to like them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Guitar Stories on Friday, man. I'll be picking me up a copy for sure. So
cool.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll send you a link as well. But it's a fun record, and there's some really great musicians on it. With Guitar Stories records, I usually have other players on there. A cellist, a couple of violin players, a couple of different bass players, percussionists. So I've got some really wonderful players. Jimmy Johnson plays bass on a couple tracks. He's a fabulous LA session player his regular gig is James Taylor, but he's also well known. He used to play with Alan Holdsworth, who was an amazing guitar player. Played with all kinds of people, but so he's on a couple of tracks as well, and a number of other great players on the record. So, more Guitar Stories has got more of these kind of ensemble songs where it's slack key, but we've got bass, violin, cellos, percussion, things like that.
So out of the solo albums and the stuff that you've done, which one of yours is kind of your favorite, your kind of go-to? Do you have a favorite?
Well, I don't really listen to my records after I put them out that much, eventually I'll hear them or it'll, I hear when I'm doing something on Spotify or whatever, sometimes a track will come up and I'll go, hey, that sounds pretty good, But I was really, I'm proud of them all, and usually it's whatever my last CD is what I'm most proud of. But I'm really, I guess, especially proud of my last two CDs, Moku Maluhia, Peaceful Island, and the previous Guitar Stories record. And I really love those records. And of course, this new one, I'm sure will end up being a favorite too. And once I get used to it, it's. I've heard it a bunch of times, of course, because I'm working on it. But after I put the record out, I kind of step away from it for a while, and then come back to it later and listen to it and see how it holds up.
Right on. So I gotta ask. I know you've been with Weird Al for a long time, man. There has got to be some really good stories. You got anything that really sticks out? Any really good memories? Really good stories?
Oh man, there are so many. I mean, it's just. There are just, it's unbelievable. I often remember a lot of the studio recordings, because we would record in some, beautiful studios, and Al would, he's always very organized in the studio. So a lot of times I have some really good studio memories. Like I remember there was one song where he wanted to have us all sing backup vocals, but he wanted them to be very high sounding. So he brought in a tank of helium, and we all just, kept taking helium breaths before every take. So we would sing with this very high helium voice. So the backup vocals were all on helium. And I remember another song where he, it was a parody of a U2 song. That was it, Hold Me, Kiss Me, Thrill Me, Kill Me, or whatever that song was. But anyway, it was called Cavity Search, and it was all about dental decay. And so at the end of the song, where normally there was this kind of big, kind of instrumental guitar solo thing, he had his dentist come to the studio with a drill and a human tooth, and they set up the microphones and recorded his dentist drilling a human tooth for the solo.
That's awesome.
And the engineer liked to listen loud. I don't know if his ears were shot or whatever, but he liked it loud. And man, hearing that dentist drill in stereo at like 120 dB was like, I'll have to say, is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, what really impresses me a lot about, Al's band is, you guys have pretty much kept the same group of guys for years, man. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of lineup changes in that band, correct?
No, the new guy's been there for 24 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I mean. When the new guy's been there for 24 years, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
He still gets treated as the new guy, though,
Yeah, okay. So.
Yeah, it's amazing, the longevity. I mean, Al's career, has pretty much outlasted every band that he's ever done a parody of.
Absolutely. So I do got a question about the new album. So Guitar Stories, obviously we're going to keep talking about that a little bit because, it's coming out here fresh on Friday. The most recent single's called Fragile. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, that Fragile was a single, and it's not on the More Guitar Stories record. It's just a standalone single.
Okay.
And I had already sort of had the playlist for More Guitar Stories was pretty much set, and I was pretty much getting ready to wrap it up. But I started just sort of thinking of the way the situation of the world today, and the situation we're in, and that song just popped in my head. It's like, I've always loved that song. It's a really beautiful message, and would be very timely. It just seems like it was a good time to put out a cover of it. And so I sort of I went through and kind of I used one of my own special tunings that I use a lot, called the Mahoe tuning. It has two strings that are the same pitch. And I just came up with an arrangement using that tuning, and it was fun. It came out really, really nice. It sort of, it has the melodies in there from the original tune, but it's done with a slack key tuned guitar, and then also another little guitar called a soprano guitar made by a company called Velette. Very small. It's tuned almost an octave higher than a regular guitar. So it's basically those two instruments, and it just really worked. And I thought, well, I'll just put this out as a single, just a digital single, and I got a lot of good feedback from it.
Right on. So I had one more other question about, obviously Weird Al. Hey, do you have a favorite Weird Al album?
Oh man, jeez, that is really tough. A lot of the fun, for me, a lot of the fun things I really love about the albums are Al's originals. His original tunes are brilliant, and they're usually stylistically, he would call them style parodies. They're sort of like a stylistic, a song done stylistically and, in the style of another artist, he's done some fabulous ones. I think on the Poodle Hat record, he did one called Genius in France, which is a epic, maybe 8 or 10 minute long tribute to Frank Zappa. And it was very difficult, a lot of changes. I mean, it was very complex song and some really cool guitar solos. That one stands out. Also on one of the later records, I think it was on Straight Outta Linwood, there was a song which was sort of a Brian Wilson epic, another 8 or 9 minute long epic song called Pancreas. It was basically a musical tribute to his pancreas.
That's great.
But musically, it was just superb, just amazing. And I remember it was mixed in quadraphonic surround sound. I remember being at the studio at Westlake Audio in Santa Monica or in Hollywood, sitting there listening to the mix, the playback in surround sound. It was like, man, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I go back a long ways. I remember, this is a little story. I'll tell you something funny about myself. So back in, I don't know, we were in like 5th grade, I think it was, when N3D came out. And I remember Eat It came out, and I had the Michael Jackson coat. We were at the variety show at school, and we were doing Eat It on stage, and it was really neat. And then I also remember Dare to Be Stupid was a really good follow-up to that. That was a great record.
Yeah. That was an excellent record, and that video for the song "Dare to Be Stupid" was very ahead of its time. I mean, obviously, "Dare to Be Stupid" was a stylistic parody of Devo, but it was Al's original lyric. Great concept, and the video was spectacular. I mean, the colors and the creativity in that video was just amazing. I remember Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo was interviewed once, and he said something to the effect of, Al took what we did and just did it better, and I hate him for that.
Right, I remember that. He loved the sound that Al got out of that synthesizer, that keyboard. He just loved what he got out of that.
Yeah, and it was well done because that goes back a number of years. That goes way back, and it was I remember the video shoot too. I remember being there all day shooting the video and getting to ride plastic horses and all kinds of stuff. Plastic cows. We had plastic cows in the studio.
That's great, man. You've been doing this a long time, man. That's pretty cool. You got a lot of good memories there, man.
Absolutely. It's been a blessing. I mean, Al's this really sweet guy to work for, and, it's nothing but fun. We have a great time. Our last couple of tours were fantastic. The last tour that we did, was we toured with an orchestra every night. We had a full orchestra. It's called the Strings Attached Tour, and so that was a new experience, having a full orchestra on stage with us every night. And the tour before that was called the Ridiculously Self-Indulgent, Ill-Advised Vanity Tour. That was all no parodies. It was all Al's originals, and we would have a different set every night. So we, started off learning about 60 songs for the show. And then as part of the encore, we would do a straight cover in the encore every night, a different one. And there were 77 shows. So we learned 60 songs for the tour, and then another 77 covers.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was a lot of work. But looking back, it was like, wow, that was quite an accomplishment. And we had in fact, there's a YouTube link out there that has little snippets of all the different covers. It's called basically Weird Al. If you just Google Weird Al 77 covers, you'll find a medley of every cover song we did, little, 10 seconds of each one or whatever. And it goes everywhere from, just from metal to country to Elvis to, polka to everything you can think of, every style,
That's great. Yeah, it took me a long time, man, but I finally did get to see a show a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it, man. I had a blast. If no one's ever seen Weird Al, they got to go see it. It's a great experience.
Yeah, it's a very entertaining show, and a lot of people, get dragged to the show and they're okay, well, I'll go with you, and then then they just go, oh my God, I had no idea. It is a very entertaining show, and a lot of high tech, of course, a lot of video involved these days, and things like that. So we're hoping to get back out there again at the end of next year. Hopefully is the plan. We'll see what happens, but.
Well, I hope so, and I'll make sure if we get out there, I'll make sure to say hi to you, brother.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. And so, and like I said, I'll send you a link to the new record as well. I thought I'd already done that, but I guess not, but I will.
No, please do. And hey, also, would you like to promote anything at this time? Would you like to tell people where they're going to be able to pick up your record on Friday? Anything else you'd like to throw out there?
Yeah, basically, my website is of course has all the links, and you can get the CD or download off my website, and that's JimKimoWest.com, JimKimowest.com. But it'll also be out it comes out on all the services on Friday, so it'll be on iTunes, Pandora, Spotify, Tidal, all those, Amazon, etc. It should be in all those places on Friday. So, basically you just search my name or More Guitar Stories and it'll pop up. But my website is kind of the clearinghouse for it, and it's got some kind of cool videos on it and stuff too.
Perfect. Well, Jim, it's been great, man, and I really appreciate you doing this. It means a lot.
Thank you, Bobby. Thanks for asking, man.
Absolutely, and hopefully, in the future we can have you back on. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and give our friend Greg my best.
I will, man. Greg's a great guy, man. He's nothing but awesome, man. Greg's great.
I usually see him every year at the NAMM show, but now they're not going to have NAMM this January, so
yeah,
have to be the next time.
Yeah, I'd actually talked to him here in the last year or so about actually going with him, at one time here in the next couple of years, but maybe next year.
Yeah, all right, man. Well, thanks, Bobby. I appreciate your time and really appreciate you the support, man.
No, I appreciate you, Jim. You take care of yourself, brother. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye. Aloha.
Aloha, buddy. Bye-bye. That concludes today's episode of the Metal Bob Live podcast. Please go to our website to check our sponsor links. Thank you for listening. Metal Bob out.